There arrives a moment quiet, yet undeniable, when something within stirs. It's not a sound in the physical sense, but a pulse, a tremor, a ripple that moves through the very fabric of your soul. It doesn't shout, it doesn't insist, it simply is. It touches you in a way you can't explain, pulling softly but firmly at the deepest part of your being. You pause. You listen, not with your ears, but with something more ancient, more subtle. And in that sacred stillness, you realize that something long dormant within you has begun to awaken. It is as if a frequency hidden beneath the noise of the world begins to resonate inside you. This silent music seems familiar, though you cannot recall from where. It evokes a longing that has no name, a desire not tied to anything in the external world. You do not know what you are seeking, only that you can no longer stay where you are. Life as you knew it feels too small, too constrained, too heavy. What once brought comfort now feels like a prison. What once made sense now dissolves into questions. The world around you continues its rhythm, busy, loud, hurried. But something in you slows down. You begin to sense there is more to life, more to yourself, more to existence. The mundane no longer satisfies. The roles you've played, the masks you've worn, the identities you've assumed, they all begin to crack. You don't know who you are becoming, only that you can no longer be who you were. And in this unknowing, in this sacred unraveling, the journey begins. This internal shift isn't something that can be explained to others easily. It doesn't fit into logical categories or predictable timelines. It is a summons from beyond. The veil, a call from the realm of spirit that reaches beyond thought, beyond form. And yet, despite its mystery, it feels more real than anything you've ever known. You are not sure where this path will lead, but something inside you knows you must follow it. Not because you are forced, but because to resist would be to betray your own soul. This call is not dramatic or loud. It is gentle, persistent, unmistakable. It arrives in dreams, in synchronicities, in moments of stillness. It shows up as a tear that escapes without warning, as a sense of being homesick for a place you can't name. It hums in the background when you look at the sky or sit in silence. It is the memory of a truth you have always carried, now surfacing. After being buried under years of forgetting, you may try to return to your old life. You may attempt to silence the inner stirring with distractions, responsibilities, or logic. But once the soul has tasted even a drop of remembrance, nothing external can satisfy. The hunger isn't for success or recognition, it's for meaning, for truth, for union. And so, slowly, you begin to respond. You read words that feel like they were written for you. You are drawn to spaces and people that mirror this inner shift. You begin to seek, not out of desperation, but from a deep, holy curiosity. This seeking is not about collecting more knowledge, but about unlearning what never belonged to you. It is about peeling back the layers of conditioning, inherited beliefs, and societal expectations that have kept you disconnected from your essence. You start to realize that much of what you believed about yourself was never truly yours. You were shaped by fears that were not your own, molded by systems that never saw your light. And now, that light is pushing to the surface, demanding to be seen. There is a sacred discomfort in this process. The unraveling is not always graceful. You may feel lost, disoriented, alone. The familiar reference points no longer offer stability, and the new ones have not yet formed. It is a liminal space, a space between stories, where the old has crumbled, but the new has not yet been born. In this void, you are invited to trust without evidence, to surrender without knowing. And while the mind may resist, the heart understands. Begin to feel that there is intelligence guiding this path, an unseen presence, gentle and wise, that is leading you back to yourself. You cannot see it, but you sense it in the way everything begins to align. People show up at the right time. Messages appear just when you need them. Inner clarity arrives in the midst of chaos. You are not alone, even if it sometimes feels that way. The soul does not walk this path unattended. You are accompanied, watched over, and deeply loved. Even when you forget as you continue, something within begins to heal. Not because someone fixed you, but because you finally stopped running. You stopped pretending. You let yourself feel what had long been hidden. You wept the tears that had waited lifetimes to fall. You held your own pain like a child who had been left outside for too long. And in doing so, you discovered that healing is not about returning to who you were, but becoming who you truly are. You realized that the call you heard was not coming from outside of you. It was the voice of your own soul, echoing through time, calling you back to wholeness. It was the remembrance of your eternal nature, reminding you that you are not your wounds, your fears, or your past. You are a spark of the divine, temporarily, dreaming yourself as separate. And now, the dream is ending. The awakening has begun. This is not a destination, but a sacred becoming. You do not arrive all at once. You unfold, you soften, you deepen. The path reveals itself step by step, moment by moment. And with each step, you reclaim more of yourself, not through striving, but through allowing. Not through force, but through grace. What falls away is what was never truly you. What remains is what always was. As you move deeper into this unfolding, you begin to perceive life through a new lens. It is as if the colors are more vivid, the moments more sacred, the silence more alive. You start to notice the patterns that once governed your choices. Those unconscious loops born of fear, rejection, or abandonment. But now, instead of reacting blindly, you observe, you pause, you listen, and in that pause, you find the power to choose differently, to respond from awareness rather than from wounds. This is not always easy. To awaken is to feel more, not less. The numbness begins to fade, and with it comes a flood of emotions you had long kept at bay. Grief, joy, rage, tenderness all surge to the surface, asking to be witnessed, not judged. You learn that healing is not linear. Some days you feel vast and free. Other days you feel like everything is falling apart. But even in the falling, something is being rebuilt, something real, rooted, and true. The inner architecture of your being begins to shift. You become more attuned to your intuition, more sensitive to energy, more discerning about what you allow into your field. You no longer tolerate what drains your spirit or dims your light. Boundaries arise, not from bitterness, but from self-respect. You stop negotiating your worth, stop shrinking to fit into places that require you to abandon yourself. And in that fierce reclaiming, you find peace. You also begin to remember that you are not merely here to survive or perform. You are here to embody a unique expression of the divine, to live with depth, with presence, with authenticity. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be whole. And wholeness includes your shadows, your doubts, your imperfections. They are not flaws to be eradicated, but aspects of you longing to be loved back into integration. In this space of remembrance, your relationship with the mystery begins to change. God, Source, Spirit, whatever name you give the infinite, becomes less of a distant concept and more of an intimate presence. You no longer seek it outside of yourself, for you have felt it in your breath, your heartbeat, your silence. It lives in the spaces between thoughts, in the hush between words. It is not a belief to be argued, it is an experience to be lived. And yet, the world does not always mirror this sacred unfolding. You may find that as you awaken, you grow distant from those who once walked closely with you. Some cannot understand the language your soul now speaks. Others fear the changes they see in you, as it challenges the illusions they are not yet ready to release. This is part of the path. To awaken is, in many ways, to die to who you were. And with every death comes grief, but also rebirth. You learn to honor the cycles of expansion and contraction, of solitude and connection, of clarity and confusion. You stop chasing arrival points and begin to trust the flow. Life is no longer a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be danced with. And in that dance, you begin to taste freedom, the kind that comes not from having all the answers, but from being at peace with the questions. Your heart, once guarded by necessity, begins to soften. It doesn't mean you stop feeling pain. It means you stop fearing it. You allow love to enter places where there was once only armor. You begin to see others not through the lens of judgment, but through compassion. You realize everyone is carrying their own invisible burdens, their own forgotten songs. And suddenly, your interactions become more sacred, your presence more healing. Even in the face of darkness, both within and around you, you no longer feel powerless. You begin to understand that light is not the absence of shadow, but the courage to walk through it. You face your fears not with aggression, but with gentleness. You meet your inner demons not as enemies, but as messengers. Every trigger becomes a doorway. Every pain becomes a teacher. And slowly, you become your own healer. The voice that once called you now becomes part of your own voice. You no longer wait for signs. You live as the sign. Your life becomes the prayer. Your presence becomes the offering. There is a quiet radiance that begins to emanate from you, not because you try, but because you are aligned. You have stopped pretending. You have stopped running. You are home, and yet this home is not static. Awakening is not a one-time event, but a lifelong deepening. Just when you think you've arrived, a new layer reveals itself. The spiral continues. You revisit old wounds with new eyes. You find compassion for parts of you that once caused shame. And each time you descend, you rise with more wisdom, more clarity, more love. This is the sacred paradox. The more you awaken, the more human you become. Not in the conditioned sense of ego and limitation, but in the soulful sense of tenderness, presence, and truth. You laugh more easily. You cry without apology. You listen with your whole being. You stop seeking to be special, and instead, you strive to be real. And in your realness, you become luminous. You begin to understand that the journey was never about becoming something else. It was about unbecoming everything that wasn't you. It was about peeling away the false to reveal the original. And that original you, the soul-born, stardust-woven, eternally beloved you, is not separate from the source. You carry the divine not as a belief, but as a living reality within every cell. Others may feel this when they are near you, not because you preach or prove, but because your presence reminds them of something they too have forgotten. You become a mirror, a lighthouse, a quiet invitation for others to remember their own light. And yet, you do not seek followers or validation. You walk your path not for recognition, but for love. And that love, being of the highest frequency, reshapes everything it touches. The more you trust this path, the less you need to control it. You release the illusion of certainty and embrace the unknown as sacred. You stop fighting what is and begin to collaborate with the unfolding. Life ceases to be a battle and becomes a partnership. Even the pain, even the challenges, they are no longer punishments, but portals. And you, now wise with the scars of your becoming, walk through each, one with grace. You begin to sense the interconnectedness of all things. The boundaries between self and other, between inner and outer, begin to dissolve. You see how your energy ripples into the collective, how every thought, every choice, carries a frequency that shapes the web of life. With this awareness comes responsibility, not out of guilt, but from reverence. You start to live more consciously, choosing love over fear, presence over distraction, truth over comfort. You no longer rush through life as if it were something to conquer. Instead, you move slowly, intentionally, honoring the sacred in the simple. A breath becomes a blessing. A sunrise becomes a sermon. The touch of a hand, the sound of laughter, the falling of rain, all become reminders that the divine is not separate from the ordinary, but infused within it. Your life, once fragmented, becomes a living altar. You may still encounter doubt. You may still face days where the path feels unclear or your heart feels heavy. But now, you don't panic. You don't collapse. You breathe. You trust the rhythm of the journey. You have learned that even in the silence, the mystery is present. Even when the way is hidden, your soul knows. And that knowing is enough. There are moments when the magnitude of what you're remembering moves you to tears, not tears of sorrow, but of recognition. You remember lives beyond this one, contracts made before this incarnation, promises whispered across the veil. You feel the presence of unseen allies, ancestors, beings of light, who walk with you, who have always walked with you. You no longer feel alone in your awakening, for you sense the great chorus of souls rising with you. And with this rising comes a call, not a demand, but a deep invitation. To serve, not from martyrdom or obligation, but from overflow. You begin to realize that the healing you've undergone is not just for you, it's for the collective. Your story, your voice, your truth, your art, your presence, they all become vehicles through which love expresses itself into the world. You become a channel, a vessel, a living bridge between spirit and matter. You may find yourself drawn to places you've never been, to people you've never met, yet feel you've always known. Your soul leads now, not your ego. Synchronicities become signs. Dreams become messages. The invisible becomes more real than the visible. You are being guided, not towards safety or success as the world defines it, but towards sacred alignment with your soul's blueprint. And as you walk this path, you begin to embody what you once only read about. Peace is no longer a concept, it is your resting place. Grace is no longer an idea, it is the way you move. Wisdom is no longer found in books, it flows through your being, born of direct experience. You become the living scripture, the embodied truth, the awakened heart in human form. This is not to say you cease being human. On the contrary, you become more deeply human than ever before. You make space for your tears, your laughter, your longings, your flaws. You hold the full spectrum of your experience without shame. You stop trying to transcend your humanity and instead infuse it with divinity. In doing so, you become whole. Others may feel this shift. Some may be drawn to you, others may resist you. Not because you are trying to change them, but because your presence illuminates what they have yet to face. And still you love. You remain open. You hold space not to rescue or fix, but to witness. For you have learned that true transformation does not come from force, but from allowing. There will be moments of quiet awe when you realize how far you've come, not in outward achievements, but in the softness of your heart, in the steadiness of your presence, in the truth of your being. You will look back at the pain and see it as the portal it was. You will honor the versions of you who didn't yet know what you now embody. And you will bless the path, every twist and turn, for it brought you here, to this moment, this breath, this sacred now. You begin to live more fully in the present, not as an escape from the past or fear of the future, but as a devotion to what is. Each moment becomes an opportunity to anchor light, to speak with love, to act with integrity. Your life becomes your meditation. Your choices become your prayer. Eventually, you realize there is no final destination, no mountaintop where the journey ends. The path continues always inward, always upward, always deeper. And you, now awakened, walk it not with urgency, but with reverence. You are not chasing the divine, you are embodying it. And in that embodiment, you become a gift to the world. You will still have to live in the world, pay bills, navigate relationships, face challenges. But now you do it from a place of rootedness. The chaos no longer defines you. The noise no longer sways you. You walk with a quiet certainty, not because. You know everything, but because you trust yourself. You trust the source within you, and that trust becomes your compass. Even in the darkest nights of the soul, you remember that dawn always comes. Even in the stillness, you know that life is moving. Even in the heartbreak, you sense the invitation to open more. You become less afraid of loss, for you have touched the eternal. You have remembered who you are. And nothing can take that from you, Dot. And so, you walk. Not ahead of others, not above them, but beside them. As a light, as a reminder, as a sacred presence in a forgetful world. You live not to convince, but to radiate. Not to impress, but to inspire. Not to gather followers, but to awaken leaders. You live, simply and profoundly, as a soul in service to love. For that is the essence of the calling, the whisper that began it all. It wasn't a command. It wasn't a threat. It was love. It was always love. And it still is.